On today's Which Word of the Day, I am choosing metaphysical adjective. Ooh, metaphysical.
Let's get metaphysical, physical.
Yes, that's the way. So, metaphysical describes a branch of philosophy that examines the basic structure of reality. Metaphysics dealt with more abstract questions about the reality beyond what we perceive with our senses. So this is where you look at a physical object and you contemplate how, why, or where it exists. Does it change? If I eat this apple, does it exist somewhere else? To be or not to be. The term may also pertain to the study of occult and paranormal phenomena like metaphysical healing, auras, and the power of pyramids. Ta-da!
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel smarter.
You're welcome. And I'm choosing a picture of Wiccan to go with this week's word, so yay!
Coming soon to Agatha All Along.
You haven't even read that?
Wait, what are you doing with the book?
So he has the confidence to finish the story.
Hear now the words of the witches.
Can you hear the words of the witches? Yeah, the words of the witches.
Welcome to Words of the Witches, the Charmed podcast that will guide you through the lesser-known published lore of the Charmed universe.
In this night and in this hour, we call upon our fanboy power, bringing education and stupefaction to all of you.
Together, we will use our knowledge and reverence abundantly, but also find ourselves sassy and delightful.
Which is why we will truly be charmed.
Okay, spellworders, yes, this is Words of the Witches, episode 119, and I am Kevin, your resident Charmed resource.
And I'm Sean. I just love the supernatural.
So, just us again today, no guests. We are going to finish up the Book of Three that we've been covering.
Ooh.
But we did have a poll last week that I almost forgot to enter, and staying in line with that forgetfulness, I forgot to post it on the Instagram until like 20 minutes ago. So, but we have some results.
No. Who are you, me?
I know. Things happen, whatever. So the question was, do you prefer the tone of season 1 or season 5 of Charmed? And since, 20 minutes ago, we had 67 votes. So that's pretty good. It might change. I might have to give you updated results next week when we have the full thing, but who knows? But so far, between season 5 has 4 votes, 10%, and season 1 has 38 votes, 90%.
Wow.
So I think we know the winner there.
Yeah, it's trending a certain way.
Yeah, after like 5 minutes, I checked it, and it had 14 votes, and all of them said season 1. So, but I mean, season 5 does have some love. So, season 5 just got another one as I speak.
I did that.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you did. So, yay, season 5. Whatever. It's fine.
It's fine.
All right, so we are finishing off the Book of Three, written by Diana Gallagher and Paul Ruditis, published April 6, 2004. All that jazz is back. And this week, we are covering the last section, Behind the Scenes. All right.
Ooh.
So this was a section, it had an introduction that told us, this is from the authors, that told us that they visited the set whilst they were filming Oh My Goddess, the 2-part finale of season 5. And that is something that Paul actually told me when I interviewed him, before we did the comics. When he came on the podcast, he did say, yeah, I was there for season 5. I'm like, oh. So, yeah, we did talk about that on this podcast a little bit. They spent 2 days there. They just talked to producers, they talked to the cast, and they talked to some of the crew. We're not going to go through the details of there's a lot of stuff. So I just made kind of like bullet points of things that struck out to me in each interview. And I'll focus on those. I'm not going to talk about everything. But yeah, if there's anything you wanted to say that you found that you liked, give it a shot.
Hi.
Cool. So it started with the producers of Charmed. And where else than the top? We have Aaron Spelling and his partner, E. Duke Vincent, who worked on lots of shows together. Do you have any bullet points for them?
Not a lot. It's interesting and funny. Because I watched this, of course, just a few years ago. I started my charm journey. So hearing them talk about how much they spent on special effects and how like the special effects were like looked upon as so awesome by the industry, I'm like, these special effects right here, these ones. But yeah, it was cutting edge for its time.
Yeah, they talked about how this was out of all their shows they've done, lots of shows, that this had the most special effects. And Aaron Spelling's like, yeah, and I have the bills to prove it.
Yeah.
And I like that E. Duke Vincent, he said that fans notice what he calls fragmentary things, like minor things that no one should really focus on. Like, they noticed that we used a different baby as Wyatt. How crazy. I would never notice that. Like, yeah, people know that stuff.
Yeah, he hasn't met you yet. You're gonna scare the shit out of him.
I know. Like, oh, you want to get down to details? Let's go. uh, Aaron referred to Alyssa Milano as the quarterback on set, the one that people went to for advice and leadership. How do you feel about that statement after recent events?
So that was part of my note for Alyssa too. It's crazy because you're right. You've mentioned before how Alyssa's never really talked about her side as much. So reading it in this book, getting more of her side, I think I'm forming a picture of what I think may have happened. I think Alyssa and Shannon are they both like being top dogs. They like being like the mother figure.
Yeah,
So that explains a lot as to why they would have butt heads more. And like
right.
Holly like doesn't talk about fighting with Alyssa so much because Holly's more of a kickback, like somebody else do the work kind of person. So
Exactly. But
yeah.
Alyssa and Shannon both wanted to be they always wanted to be in the middle. They wanted to have, the spotlight. They kind of competed for that, even if they didn't know they were competing for that. I think they're kind of set up that way based on personality and just the system itself. So,
Hmm.
but I do think there's also some truth to her being very welcoming, because many guest stars and people like Kaylee Cuoco have gone on to say how welcoming and supportive Alyssa was on set, and that Kaylee goes on in her life and remembers that act and tries to follow suit and do that for other people in her shows. So that's nice. On the other hand, there are reports of her complaining and having tantrums on set. So, yeah, I suppose people are entitled to good and bad days, but
Yeah.
it's just interesting.
Hmm.
All right, then we move on to Brad Kern. Okay,
Your favorite.
yes. So I'm going to talk about what he says in this interview, and then have more conversation. so, um, so Brad Kern was hired to turn the picked up presentation pitch into a pilot. Don't you love that alliteration?
I do. And you delivered it so well.
I planned it out. It's fine. But I was like, because as I was writing my notes, I'm like, oh my gosh, I just totally did a lot of P's. It's perfect. So yeah, so he was hired like after Constance came up with the idea and pitched it to the network. They were kind of interested in this, and so he was there from the unaired pilot all the way through the end, which is pretty
Wow.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, he said that he knows how to understand and write female characters, and I was quite triggered by that. Which we'll talk about in a minute. But I was like, that the way that he was so like sure of himself, like I can write female characters. I'm like, okay, that's snaky. I don't like that at all.
I feel like he
um,
probably has some sort of like cross dressing secret history.
and I feel like that is a debatable kind of like I think he can write good TV. As for female characters, there's a lot of people that will argue with him. Like if you think they say
Mm.
screwed every minute of the day or baby crazy or whatever, sure, that's great women. um, but yeah, interesting. He says that the OG sisters, Prue, Piper, Phoebe, are disparate and now forced to come together, like the premise of the show, and that he is proud that the sisters are not interchangeable because they are very distinctive characters, and he credits much of that to the acting. And then he said that it's important that they honored the pain of losing Prue, but also introduced the light that Paige brought. And all of that I really enjoyed. I loved what he said there.
Mm-hmm.
And then he says that he catered to the strengths of the actresses without writing them into ruts. He let them do what they want. He said he was open to their concerns. And then he talked about the fans, how he followed them no matter what time slot, no matter what day, wherever they were moved to, and that the fans were incredibly loyal. And I can attest to that because I was there moving my days around
Yep,
all
you were one of them.
the time. So, but we never, on this podcast, we never really had the Brad Kern conversation at all. We always kind of danced around it. So you want to get behind the scenes? Let's get behind the scenes. What do you know about Brad Kern?
I know that he did not get along with Shannon. I know he kept trying to push for the girls to like wear less and less clothes. And he wanted to like over sexualize them as much as possible. I know like none of the girls like him. So yeah, I don't know. That's about it. Fill me in.
Oh, then you're in for a treat because that's not even hitting the iceberg. Oh my gosh. All right. So,
Oh
um,
no.
so let me start with a positive. He was there from the beginning, and whether we like the decisions he made or not, I do think he did a lot for the show. He had to. It was his job at stake. It was lots of people's jobs at stake, and I know he is proud of the show. You know, considering he did steal the Book of Shadows from Holly, even though they shared on custody of the Book of Shadows, but he just took it and ran. So that's another notch in his side. But he said a lot of nice things here, and I do think he listened to input from the actresses, at least in ways that he felt were acceptable, or to keep them from quitting, because there are lots of things he would not consider. But I know he tried to keep them happy for the most part. That being said, the negatives far outweigh whatever good he did on the show. So let's talk about
Uh-oh.
that. Let's talk about that. I'm breaking it down for the peoples. So he is responsible for the character of Cole for one, and you don't like Cole. Um,
Good start.
yeah, yeah. He and Constance disagreed on Cole. Brad created him to be a conflict for the sisters, but Constance preferred typical sisterly bickering and did not want to center it around some guy. She didn't want this to be their main thing. Like, that was dumb. Connie actually fought to be showrunner in pre-production of season 3, but the studio ended up siding with Kern.
Ooh, that sucks.
You know, this is Connie's show. She created the concept. This was based on her sisters, so she wanted it to be a certain way. Whereas Brad's like, I know TV, I know how to sell a show. And granted, he has more experience, and he probably did know how to be flashy, and he was a man, so of course the studio sided with him. So
I like how you just looked in that last one, and he's a man.
He was also almost never around set. He was never around. He stayed in the writer's room, and even when Holly and Alyssa became producers, they could never get a hold of him to ask questions or get approval for things. So he just hid away for the most part. He was fired from NCIS New Orleans. Do you know any about his New Orleans history?
No.
Yeah, he worked on NCIS New Orleans for a number of years. But he was finally fired from there due to 3 different investigations of sexual harassment and bigotry. Yeah, there's reports claiming that he fired an actress he deemed unfuckable and hired another because top CBS executives wanted to fuck her. That's a whole thing. Former colleagues of Kern even went on record to back up the claims about his behavior, and these are people from Charmed. So the industry likes to pat itself on the back for honoring the Me Too movement, but sexism and misogyny is so deeply entrenched, the progress made is tenuous at best. It's made of gossamer, said co-executive producer on the original Charmed, William Schmidt, and he produced 17 episodes and wrote Sight Unseen and Bride and Gloom. He wrote 2 episodes in season 3. He says, if Brad Kern keeps his job in light of yet another investigation, it will be proof of that the system is whacked.
Wow.
And then Nell Scovell, and this is a woman who was a producer on Charmed, echoed the sentiment. She says, I was co-executive producer to Brad's executive producer on Charmed, so I've seen firsthand how he poisons the writer's room with unprofessional comments. Then she goes on, the recent harassment investigations show that his behavior has continued. This is unfortunate. You get better work when every writer in the room feels safe. I know I will experience backlash for speaking out, but I want this business to change, and I want writers' rooms to feel safe for all. I mean, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that sucks.
There's more. It was reported that over a dozen women left NCIS New Orleans in the span of a year due to the toxic environment created by Kern. One source said he discriminates against women, against working mothers, against anyone he can't control, especially women. So His whole sentence about I know how to write women, triggering even more.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. In that same story where that person wrote that it was alleged that he mockingly spoke in black vernacular on set, told a woman she was failing as a wife and mother, and engineered the exit of Zoe McClellan because men didn't find her fuckable. That's what we talked about before. And a nursing mother told HR that she was made fun of by Kern while feeding her child, which is weird because they did a whole storyline on Charmed about that.
Huh.
So it's crazy. It's crazy. Icky.
Yeah. This guy sucks.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so sorry that I ruined him even more for you.
I'm not. I'm fine with it.
Yeah, but I figure now is the time to bring it up. So, so based on all this, Brad Kern is clearly threatened by strong women. It's probably why he ousted Constance and why he ousted Shannon. It's all connected. So, I truly blame him more than anyone for her leaving. And I don't think Alyssa is as awful as what some say now. I know, the recent podcast and everyone kind of going against Alyssa is very common right now. And I know she did crappy things. But I think it's more about, personality. And I do think she played nice with Kern for job security. And that is part of why it became so traumatic for Shannon because, felt like she was fighting Brad a lot. And to have Alyssa side with him was kind of a hard thing.
That's a good point.
That's what I'm guessing soon. That's what I'm guessing happened. But
Yeah.
all right, let's move on from that guy. Let's talk to someone so much nicer. We love him, James L. Conway. He's been on from the beginning, directed most of the season premieres and finales. He was married to Rebecca Baldwin, our favorite Elise. Rest in peace. So yeah, any notes on him?
Not really. He came across as really nice, though. You're right. I like what I've learned about James. But Brad also seemed like a stand-up guy from his section. Look where that got me.
Yeah. No, we love James. And I actually asked him to come on this podcast, talk to him, and he responded really nicely. He's like, not doing podcasts and not doing interviews at this time, but good luck on the podcast. So it's really nice that he even responded.
Yeah.
I found out some stuff from his section. Meetings take up a large portion of the shooting day for him. I'm just in meetings. I'm not there on the set so much unless he's probably directing an episode. But I'm like, all right. He was proud of when Cole died the first time. He's talking about when the sisters had to vanquish him for the first time, and Phoebe's crying in her bed, and the sisters come to comfort her. The Long Live the Queen one. I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah. So, and then it said he really liked A Page from the Past as well. That one of his John Perret directed. So.
Nice.
And I like that. I thought it was funny that ladies at his dentist office would egg him for more info because they were Charmed fans. Like, oh, you work on Charmed? Tell us everything. So it was fun to know.
If you want me to remove this drill from your gums, you're going to tell me more.
Right. Cool. Then we had John Perret, and these are all the producers. He was on set all the time. So while, Aaron and James and everybody they were kind of there, but not the guy. He was the on-set person, in charge of meeting the budget and stuff like that. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
He said he's proud of the emotional response of the show, and he said he was astounded and finds it odd the personal impact the audiences have with TV. He's like, I've never thought that they would connect so much to TV. Come on now.
Yeah, come on.
Maybe it's different working on the other side, but stories move people. That's the point.
Yeah.
All right. So then we moved on to the cast.
Woohoo.
Woohoo. Anything under the Alyssa Milano section?
Mostly what we've said so far. I was just surprised at how much of a den mother she seemed. Like, there's even an example about in the wake of 9/11, like she pulled the crew together and like read them something and just made sure they were all okay.
Right.
So I liked that I got to see that other aspect, the other side that we don't hear about Alyssa's good stuff on the show.
Mm-hmm. Right. It's funny that they mentioned also safesearching.com, which was something that Alyssa's mom started, and she was trying to keep porn, if you search up an actress, they want to keep all the adult stuff away from it. So you want to go through safe searching and make sure your record is clean on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And Alyssa's mom started that, and Shannon mentioned it in her podcast too, how she wanted like Shannon to have her website underneath it and all this stuff. And yeah, safe searching was a big thing back in the day. I remember. Now it doesn't exist, I don't think.
Yeah.
Then we have Holly Marie Combs. Anything under her?
Holly, what surprised me, and I didn't know as much about her, she's very much like me, I think, in that she's a freaking goofball. Like, she said she would, like, throw stuff at crew members and, like, play practical jokes on them. Like, that's me.
Yeah, and this is something she talked about in the Women of Charmed documentary way back that they shot in season 2. And I remember I tried to ask a question about the Friday night grape fights that she started. She would throw grapes at the crew, and it's like, it's Friday night, right? And mind you, they were fake grapes. They were like set grapes. They weren't even real grapes, unless they had some from lunch. I don't know, but I wanted to ask about that, and I didn't get around to. No one answered my question. It's fine.
It's fine.
But she corroborated what we learned in Shannon's podcast about how, Holly saw the script in Shannon's car and egged her on to try out for it. She's like, it's actually pretty good. And then they had the clothespin game where they would tag you with a clothespin and see how long it took you to find it, and then you'd move on to another person.
Yeah.
That would be fun. I would like that.
That would be fun.
Yeah. Oh, Holly. All right. Here's your favorite, Rose McGowan.
Rose, yeah, I was fascinated by her talk about how she'd come up in movies. So, like, at the time, which is funny because it's opposite now, but at the time it was like career suicide if you went from movies to the TV show. Who does that? And just hearing her talk about how on a movie, like, you kill yourself for a few days and then you're done, but on a show you just keep killing yourself because it just keeps going.
Yeah. It's like over and over all day, and then another day and another day and another day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So really, which one is the superior medium? Like, the TV people work so much harder.
Yeah, they do. And, like, the writers work harder because they have to keep those characters interesting over and over and over again.
Yeah. I really liked her section. I love how she reiterates something she heard in an article that Paige was described as goofily vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty cute. And then she says that she would go shopping and like buy something, and she realized she's like, wait, that's not for me. That's for Paige. That's not a Rose thing. like I go shopping and I buy some multicolored Easter egg gone mad. I'm like, oh yeah, that's for Paige, not me.
Yeah. Yeah, I found that interesting too. She was so into her character, she started shopping for her.
I mean, when you're into something that long, I think it does kind of become a part of you, and you start having to like switch your brain.
Mm-hmm.
And then she would like she talked about how like when she did her own stunts, like the crew would win because she would hit her head on the ground. It's like, ooh.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's like I go too hard sometimes.
Yeah. It's fun. It's a good time.
Brian Krause. I didn't have much to say about him, but I do love him.
Yeah, it was just interesting how he pointed out that he never knew how long Leo was going to stick around because they kind of would write him out at the end of every season. I wonder if that was purposeful. I wonder if they didn't know how long or the impact he was going to have.
Yeah, he was in constant worry over the security of his job for so long. And I think he said he became a regular in season 3. That actually did happen in season 2. But still, sometimes actors don't really know their timeline. They just realize they just happened. So
Yeah.
people in movies, and we'll talk about that with Todd Tucker. He has no idea of his timeline on the show. But yeah, but he clearly enjoyed working on Charmed, and he's such a good guy. I love Brian.
I still remember on when I was on brunch at the Hollowells with Rob, I remember not thinking much of Leo. Like, he was just background to me. And I remember Rob getting all excited, like, what do you think of Leo? Like, how do you feel about Leo? I'm like, who cares? He's like the handyman. Like, he's not a big character. So it's funny going back and like realizing, oh, he is the main character. He's in the whole freaking show.
Yeah. But it's funny because they probably didn't know how long it was going to be around. Things morphed as they wrote, and he's like, I auditioned for Andy. I'm so glad I didn't get Andy because he would have been gone.
Yeah, I would have died.
You know who else auditioned for Andy was Julian McMahon. He auditioned for Andy too.
Wow.
So there's lots of interesting connections. So
Everybody wants that Andy.
yeah, yeah. At the time, he was the main guy. Who would have thunk?
Hmm.
Okay, now we have Dorian Gregory.
I just from the video you posted of him and how well spoken he was, and reading about the stuff he appreciates, I'm like, I freaking love this man so much. He's so great.
He is a poet. He writes his poetry. He really does have a eloquent way of speaking. Even on the podcast when he appears on House of Halliwell, everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, you're such like you." They're just like astounded. Like I don't even know how to say it, respond to that because I can't say it any better. So yeah, we love Dorian. And I love how he describes Daryl's purpose as being there for people with nowhere to turn, and he comes to terms with magic because he realizes that the sisters are doing the exact same thing in a heightened state. I'm like, oh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, that was very profound. Also, I liked hearing him talk about how much he appreciated working with all the actors and watching, like, he compared it to different dance styles,
Hmm.
like how they each get ready for scenes, how they get in character. He said they were also fundamentally different, but it was all to basically capture and perform the same thing, like get through a scene, but they all connected to their character in different ways.
Yeah, everybody is a different type of dancer. We're all dancing different, but it comes together in a beautiful amalgamation. And oh,
Oh, this man. I want
I
him to
know.
read me poetry when I'm going to sleep.
Yeah,
Even if
and
it's the dictionary. Even
mhm.
if he just needs a place to be. No.
He should narrate my documentary.
There you go.
And I love that he was also diagnosed with diabetes when he was 9. I didn't realize it was so long. So he's been
Yeah.
really active with diabetes and stuff, which it's what my mom died from. It's what my nephew has. So I really admire that too.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to the crew. You didn't read this section, but we'll pretend.
I did not. But we'll pretend.
I will enlighten you on some of these folks. Okay. So the crew started with Nancy Solomon, who
Oh,
is the
Nancy. I
script.
really liked her
Oh,
section.
Nancy. I bound you, Nancy, from doing harm. She is the script supervisor, and she was hired on at the start of season 5. So she's like the brand new script supervisor. Only here for a year by the time when they did these interviews. They had 2 different script supervisors before that. They don't talk about that in the book, but I'm going to inform you on that. The season 1 and season 2 script supervisor was Susan Lowitz, so she was only on the first 2 seasons and left. And then we had Diana Valentine in season 3 and season 4, and then she left. And so then Nancy Solomon took over in season 5.
Wow, it's the curse of the 2 seasons.
I guess so. Well, Nancy was there for the rest of the series, so she won.
Okay.
This was interesting to me. Before she was a script supervisor, she was a camera operator, uh, uh, editor, a video editor, a stunt double, and then here.
That
She
is
broke her knee.
so
Yeah,
random. Yeah.
I know. I'm like, whoa. She's in charge of the continuity pretty much. So keeping sure that the costumes for each shot, where if they leave a room in this costume, they have to come back in this costume. And she had to make sure each shot was set up for each effect. Um, and it was interesting. She talked about Cat House specifically, and that was pretty cool. How they went to the old footage, and they had to match angles and lighting of the past episodes so that they could blend seamlessly with their green screen when they had to put the people in the same scene. I'm like, wow, it's so fascinating. So if you do get a chance, I think the section is pretty interesting stuff. She also had to make sure she was very mindful of props because she said if Alyssa had like a phone or a bag, she would make sure that she put it down before they got ready to do a stunt so that she's not holding it in the stunt. So it's just stuff like that she was thinking about.
Wasn't there a lot of continuity errors mentioned in these seasons when we went through the bloopers?
I mean, obviously, there's a lot. There's a lot that I think in every kind of media you make, there's going to be things you miss.
Yeah, I know. I'm just
But
throwing shade.
but yeah. I mean, I think she was in charge of doing her best.
Yeah.
All right, then we have Eilish. Ooh, Eilish.
Ooh, fashion design. I know her. You mentioned
Yeah,
her.
yeah. I've known about her because she was also in the Women of Charmed documentary. But I used to watch that a lot because it was like my only behind the scenes like interview thing for a long time. And she was the costume designer since season 2. And Eilish is Irish. I thought that was funny. And she actually is. You can see her in A Night to Remember in season 4, when the evil enchantress comes to Paige's work and she's looking on the board and there's a picture that says Paige and Eilish acting like a part, and they're together, and they just like took a picture of her in rows together and put her on the board like she works there. So Paige and Eilish
That's
was
cute.
in the episode, yeah. And she talked about how she liked Alyssa's 40s dress in Music to My Ears. That's one of her favorites. Then we have Nanette New. Nanette New. She's the head of makeup, and she talked about how there's always the possibility that they'd have to change the makeup between each shot. If lighting changed, they had to change the makeup. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
So it's not just a one and done thing. You're following them all around the set, making sure they're ready to go at that moment.
Huh.
So that was news to me. But she also talked about how each of the girls took care of the crew on set. How, Rose would bring in donuts for everybody, or they would like pitch in and buy things, and give gifts and take care of them. And so every one of them was really happy to be there and really considerate of the crew, which is good to know.
Nice.
Then we have Todd Tucker, another alliterative name here. So many superheroes working on Charmed. And Todd Tucker did the special effects makeup, not because Nanette was the makeup, like the everyday makeup. Todd Tucker was the movie makeup, the special like monsters and stuff. And he worked on season 4 to season 8. So
Wasn't he in a few episodes?
he was. He played the aggressor. He played the creeper demon. He played one of the gremlins. Actually, no, both of the gremlins. I'm sorry, he played both of the gremlins. So he appeared every once in a while doing some things. Of course, some of those are season 6, so he doesn't talk about any of the season 6 in this interview. This is still very fresh, only season 5. So he said, "I loved being the aggressor." I think that was his first time, like making it in on camera appearance. He talked about how the poltergeist was one of the scariest creatures in House Call, which I'm sure they were, but in that episode we didn't really get to get a good look at them. They were very like floaty. You can see there was some prosthetics involved, but they went by so quick you couldn't even get a good look at them. So I feel like the phantasms in season 6 were even creepier. Here's some stuff about the elf nanny he talked about. The elf nanny was made to be a beautiful elf. Get a beautiful elf, Sean.
A beautiful elf. Make me feel even worse.
Because actually, originally he said that the elf nanny was going to be like much older, like an older lady with green skin. And they, upon casting it, they realized like no, they just wanted to keep it simple and make her lovelier. So I'm like, oh,
Yeah, she was lovely.
mm-hmm. Then we have Audrey Futterman Stern, hairstylist.
Sounds like a Harry Potter name.
Yeah, Audrey Futterman Stern. She was the hairstylist. Not much to say about her, but she says she has worked with Eilish before on Murder, She Wrote. I'm like, okay, cool.
Cool.
Then we have Paul Stahelli. Paul Stahelli. He's the production designer. And what does that mean? That means he's in charge of building the sets. And he says Charmed was his favorite job because before that he was just making boring offices and like doctor shows and like how many offices and dentist offices can I make? Here I'm fantasy sets. I get to have fun. I get to make all kinds of stuff. So right now he's on this whole ice cave kick because he had to do one for the Titans, and he's remembers when he had to make the ice cream truck world in Scheme for Ice Cream. He has fun.
Yeah, he has a fun job.
Mm-hmm. And he says he has such respect for the manor sets because he wasn't in charge of those, but he, thinks they're beautiful and wants to respect them. So, of course, he has to. Then there was Roger Montesano, prop master, which, me and my Charmed props, I didn't find a lot here that was interesting, which I was surprised. But he said one of the hardest jobs for him is having to find rubber or retractable athames because someone always gets stabbed. Then there's Noon or Sadi, and he's appeared on the show a couple times too. He's the stunt coordinator. But we've seen him in Payback to Witch. We've seen him in like different crowd scenes. So you can spot him in episodes. His father was a stunt coordinator in the first season, and then he took over in second season through the rest of the show because his father started doing movies and stuff. Then there's so many names in this crew. I mean, this went on and on and on. I was like, oh geez. Then there was Randy Cabral. He's a special effects coordinator. What was interesting that he said they created and shot Guadalcanal, for Saving Private Leo, where he went to the past. They made Guadalcanal on set and shot in 4 hours.
Wow, that's crazy.
I was like, geez. He's like, yeah, we just moved all the cars out of the parking lot, covered it in sand, and just made it look like what. I'm like, that's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And then he talks about how they constantly blow up everything in the house. He's like, everything in this house had blown up multiple times. So that's pretty funny. Then there's Peter Chomsky. He's the co-producer and post-production supervisor. So he's in charge of managing the visual effects, underscore, and voiceover. Everything that happens after the shooting is done. He just kind of oversees. That's all I got. And so Stephen Lebed, he's the visual effects supervisor. So these are like the smaller people under that umbrella. Which was interesting for him. He described the evolution of orbing, how it kind of started off as just kind of like these square light particles that eventually moved into like the balls of light, and how it's all done by hand, and how every time they have to like
Wow.
I mean, they're so used to it now, but every single time they had to do it. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the last person in the book was Celeste Ray, who is a music supervisor. And she picks all the songs that appear, the ones that play over the cityscapes in the beginning. She actually chooses the P3 bands that will play. And she said that she doesn't just pick the hits of the time. She actually tries to pick songs that tie into the themes of the episode. I'm like, see, I love that. I always love that. So even her P3 guests were just trying to fit into there. Even though Brad Kern was like, we need the hits. So I think she was trying to juggle that a little bit. She also hired the music composers, people that did all the underscoring. So she hired Jay Greska and J. Peter Robinson, and they double teamed it. They both worked together to give us those music tracks.
Cool.
Yeah. And that's the book.
That's the book.
That's the whole book. That's this behind the scenes section. Any final thoughts about the book as a whole or this section at all?
Well, I think it's funny. It's called The Book of Three, but there's only 2 books.
You're funny.
No, this is a very well done book. I know there were some errors in there. That's fine. They did a good job, though. They covered a lot. They covered a lot about not just Charmed, but like the creatures of Charmed and the spells of Charmed. So very well. What's the word? It's early. Research.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a very well put together book. I think in general, researched. Yeah. This book didn't offer a lot that I didn't already know because I'm Kevin, but I do think it's a great collection of information, and I do think it's a great resource for people who wants to know this or look up something. It's nice to have this information at one's disposal, easier too.
Yeah.
I would be happier if it was a little bit more accurate, but I will forgive because clearly there's a lot of effort put into this, and admittedly it was fun to kind of spot out the mistakes too, because otherwise what will they do? I'm like, this book is perfect. I have nothing to complain. I'm like, where's the canonical section? We need a canonical section. So I think this section specifically, hearing from the creative team and all that goes into putting the show together, was my favorite, actually. It's also the least opportunity for error because they're just telling you about their experiences on the show.
Yeah, true.
I did find it weird that the book kind of ended just with a crew person. There was no like final send-off or to be continued or any like goodbye. It just was like, okay, that person's done. End of book. So that felt abrupt and unfinished to me a little bit.
Yeah, that's true.
But speaking of put that in my canonical hat.
Canonical.
I have a very short section in this book. There's only 2 things that I had for this section.
Todd Tucker.
Todd Tucker's one of them. So it says they approached Todd Tucker at the beginning of season 3 to be hired. before season 3 started, but he didn't start working on Charmed until season 4, I believe. So like, does that mean they just like had him like they talked to him and then didn't hire him for a year?
Maybe.
I don't know, or there's something that's not lining up. Also, Todd doesn't even have a concept of when he worked, because he posted on Instagram 3 years ago that I was on Charmed from season 5 through season 10. I'm like, do you know how many seasons
season
are
9
on
and 10?
You did stunts for that? Oh my gosh! Wow! You did the special effects makeup? Wow! The other canonical error is the book says that Alyssa and Holly became producers in the 3rd season. That didn't happen until season 5. So I don't know why they kept saying that. But just those 2 things.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So the final thing is the PS4 poll question for next week. Hopefully I don't forget to put it up.
Piper.
You mean it's just you and Prue, huh?
Phoebe? Phoebe, you there?
And a big hello to you too, Penny.
Come on, Patty. The rest is up to them.
Paige. My name is Paige. Another P, imagine that.
P is for poll. So what behind the scenes TV job would you want? This would be fun. Would you like to be director, in charge of costumes and makeup, stunt coordinator, or post-production supervisor? So that would include all the visual effects, the music, stuff like that.
Director. I want to tell people what to do. And then I could tell them to get into sexually explicit positions and make grunting noises.
Oh man.
I was trying to be Brad Kern.
I see. Yeah, I was thinking about director too, because of my theater experience, and I did take directing class, and I have some directing experience. I would like that, but I think I'm going to be different and choose post-production supervisor. I think I would love to do all the, the finessing of it all, and like, making sure those pretty power effects look good, and then the music sounds good, and the sound is like that. Because we do all the podcasting now, I think that would be something that's we're kind of experienced in too. So, yeah. Fun. Be curious to see what we get there. Yeah. So, this is the end of the book, end of this episode. Sean, where can we find you?
On Instagram, under Sean Porrett, ShawnPorrett. That's where you'll find all my projects and the stuff I do with Kevin.
Solving for X, X-Men podcast. Ooh, X-Men Evolution currently. Yes.
So good.
It's all right. There's some things. Working out the kinks. And then you can follow this podcast at Words of the Witches everywhere except for the Twitter place, Words of Witches there. And yeah, we will see. Oh, if you want to follow me personally, it's KJEEZY87. I don't always mention that, but there it is. Email wordsofwitchespod@gmail.com. Nobody emails, but there you go. It's there too. And yeah, so we'll see you next week for the Book of Love Spells, our teeny weeny Book of Love Spells. Look at it.
It's so cute. It's so cute. It's little.
So see you next week, Spell Worders. Your destiny still awaits.